2025, ladies and gentlemen, the action continues. So, as we know, gentlemen, the papal conclave will begin this week, May 7th, and we have a wild card entry into the race. That is right. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, is throwing his hat into the ring for papal consideration. Dan, give us a scouting report.
All right, so scouting report for Donald J. Trump. This late entry is strengths, name recognition, obviously, unmatched media presence, of course, and refuses to kneel. Always need that in a good contender. Weaknesses, not Catholic. That's probably a big one. Not clergy, nor not elected cardinal. And maybe, well, I don't know how you want to judge this one, but unfamiliar with Latin liturgy. Comp profile, all right, so think AB, Antonio Brown, if he showed up to the compound in a meter and claimed sainthood. Ooh, I don't know. Andrew, what is the Vatican saying inside?
Yeah, Vatican insiders are a bit skeptical here. A senior cardinal was overheard saying, "Is he joking, or is this American satire?" Another replied, "Doesn't matter." So we see some good and bad forces on the inside and outside of the papacy right now. What the Vatican do is anyone's guess.
Andrew, what about those Vegas odds? What are they putting Trump at to become Pope?
You know, a lot of people are poo-pooing this, but it could be a very get-rich-quick scheme. A lot like the Trump coin. You could come in with $1 and leave a millionaire. Trump is sitting at 10,000 to 1 odds to become Pope, just above Kanye and just below Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
So, we obviously, boys, are having a real media circus alert around this. Rumors swirling of Trump planning a papal campaign rally in St. Peter's Square, complete with red MAGA Berettas, Gregorian chants remixed with Kid Rock, and Make Christendom Great Again. Now, the Swiss card response has been to increase security. The papal conclave response, no comment. Now, as you boys have seen on X, the Everything app, we have also seen Senator Lindsey Graham has offered his support to Donald Trump, saying he would, quote, be a great pope. What's our final dust thoughts, boys? What do we think? What do we think about Donald Trump in the papal running?
I think this could be the greatest union of religious leaders and political leaders since the Russian Orthodox Church joined and supported the Russian oligarchs, the Russian kings.
Yeah, this really might repair the schism between the Eastern and Western churches, and this is kind of long overdue in my opinion. We need a president and a pope, same person.
So there you have it, folks. Stay tuned to this spot, and we will be back to you with all of your papal updates on this year's Pope Watch 2025.
Pope Watch.
Oh, so good.
What if Mar-a-Lago becomes like its own city-state within America, like Rome is in Italy?
Yeah.
Like it's got its own laws.
To be fair, Trump would much prefer the aesthetic of the Vatican to
Yeah.
to the White House. That's something we didn't really mention talking
God.
about the interview. The glow up
Fuck yeah.
that he's giving to the Oval Office is hilarious.
Yeah.
It looks like an antique shop.
Yeah. I like real gold.
Is that the one where he talked about how like they've been working for years and years, centuries even, to make a paint that looks like gold, but they just can't do it? This is real
Yeah.
gold.
It's called gold leaf, and like it's a thing.
Yeah, I saw online someone was like, "Hey, this like little like frill, this like leafy frill thing that he put over like the fireplace mantle is like something you can get at Lowe's," and then they just put like gold leaf on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not real gold.
American tax dollars at work. What were we talking about right before this, Ben? That was kind of interesting.
We were talking about protesters at the, I guess, town hall of Ocasio-Cortez, basically having a go at her for propagating the lie that the Biden-Harris administration was working tirelessly towards a ceasefire, which we now know they never even said the word.
Yeah, so what was the informant? I don't know. What was the source for that like came out and said that made news?
The Israeli ambassador.
Oh, like they didn't do shit.
Yeah,
It
basically.
was
Well, I
tight.
mean, I think they praised Biden, right?
Yeah.
Oh, for not intervening.
Yeah,
Yeah, they said he was the perfect guy for the time because they
yeah.
never pushed them for anything. He was basically saying it was fantastic and they had full green light to do whatever they wanted.
I want to get back on Israel and Palestine later, but I wanted to talk about what we were specifically addressing, which was Ocasio-Cortez's composure, grace under fire. And Andrew, I don't
I haven't seen any
we
of this, so
I mean, well that's kind of what we were saying. We don't think we've ever seen her in Ben's never seen an adversarial interview. I don't think I have either.
It was a town hall, and some protesters stood up and were calling her a war criminal and being
ooh.
complicit in the genocide for running cover for the Biden-Harris administration. And in the video, you see the protesters yelling, but I didn't see any video of what her response was. I don't know if there was one.
Could we
But we're
watch it? Do
just
you
kind
have it?
of,
Could we watch it? Should we
Yeah,
watch it?
yeah, yeah.
sure. We'll pull it up.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, sure, like criticize AOC, but like there are way worse people. Like she overlaps with my thinking more than a lot of other people. It's like if we're like picking AOC out of the crowd, it's like then no one is really any good. And then everyone needs to go, which might also be a valid point, but I'm just saying like
I have a response to that, but we can watch this first.
sure.
Uh,
Yeah, you want the raw footage. You don't want.
yeah.
I no, I want the Fox News version.
But yeah, you know what? That's actually probably
Let's just
a
fucking
good
that's
route.
probably
Yeah.
yeah.
They will give the most damning version of it, so
Yeah.
that's fair.
Sandra Ocasio-Cortez, we cover her very closely on Fox and TCS, and every now and then,
Now they can pronounce her full name.
her district that it breaks through to our main channel, and here we are. So she had a town hall, and people are very mad at her district, and she saw this early on in the Ukraine war. A lot of people upset that she was supporting the Ukraine war because her district has a lot of liberal people who are anti-war. So now the situation in Gaza has many of her constituents upset. And here she is at a town hall and she seems unable to control the situation. Watch.
Pretty inconsistent logic there. It's funny she said like her constituencies like anti-war and then they're upset about Gaza, but it's like, well, unless she's saying from the perspective of Gazans who don't want war. But I know that's not the perspective of Fox News, that they're not siding with this person who's arguing.
No, they just like seeing AOC get owned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I had to run that through my head. I was like, that's a little weird that they're on the anti-Israel side, but they're not
Yeah.
No, they just like seeing
they're
her
not going
get.
that far. Yeah, yeah, they're just seeing her
No,
get
they just
owned.
like seeing her get yelled at.
The enemy of my enemy. There doesn't have to
Yeah,
be consistency there.
yeah,
I saw her
yeah.
under pressure once, I think this year, and it was from like the Democratic Socialists in New York. Someone like turned off the power at her thing, which was pretty fucking terrifying, honestly, because like I don't know, that just reminds me of like Malcolm X in like a small room. I was
Yeah.
like, I
Hmm.
don't know, that's pretty dangerous. And she like fled to like a side room, and they're like, guys, like you can't shut the power off. Like I am a Congress member, and you are like it's dangerous. You just like sorry, but you can't do that. And I
Jeez.
saw
I had
another
not
one
heard
where she
about
was
that.
like mocking the protesters, where she was like
Yeah.
head banging to it. And I was
Yeah, I
like, that's a
mentioned that
little
one earlier.
tasteless. Yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look, the fact of the matter is that woman yelling at her is correct.
Yeah.
Everything she's saying is true. She did lie many, many times in service of the Harris campaign. All the things that they were saying about working towards a ceasefire when we know now that it isn't. All the things that Harris was still talking about 40 beheaded babies and women raped on October 7th, for if you want to have some
Wait,
consistency
Harris said
about,
that?
yes, if you want to have some consistency about this, I remember all these people, Democratic voters talking about the blood libel of what Trump was saying about Haitian immigrants. And while that was despicable, which one is worse? Because I would contend that propagating those lies of the Israeli government about October 7th and propagating the lie that Biden was working tirelessly for a ceasefire is a far greater blood libel than anything about Haitians cooking dogs. It has much more real world consequences for real lives of people who are still being murdered on a daily basis today. So I think it's absolutely legitimate for AOC to have people shouting her down like that. In fact, I think people like AOC should not be able to leave their house without being shouted down like this until they eventually have to see their day in The Hague. Like, she is absolutely guilty and complicit of running cover for that administration and deserves to hear about it.
One thing I think it's actually going to hurt her, say that she does go for the Senate run, which has been proposed, and then obviously the presidential run. I mean, people have short memories, of course, but she doesn't have cross-party appeal, right? So I think that she would be really leaning on left-leaning Democratic support, right? And I know that's kind of
Mhm.
an oxymoron right now, given what we just saw with a
I
confrontation of
think she
her.
wraps around the horseshoe a little bit, oddly enough.
What do you
There
mean?
is data around, well, I think like the far right on matter, like the right wingers who are pro Gaza, like there's like a strange contingency of people that voted for Trump and AOC.
Okay.
I don't know. I think like the populism kind of seeps through. It's not like a left right. Like it's not like she stops at the center. I think
But
there's
the thing
definitely like
is, she's doing everything she can to have less and less of her populist bona fides. I mean, that's the stuff she's shedding as quickly as possible to try and rise through the ranks of the Democrats. So I'm not sure that would hold water if she goes for Senate or eventually president, which everybody seems to want her to do.
which senator is she talking about? Like running it, primarying Schumer or something?
Yeah, I think it'd be Schumer.
That would be interesting. I want to go back to this people who voted for Ocasio-Cortez and Trump. Do you know why they voted for them? I mean, simply
You don't remember hearing
populism.
that around the time of the election? Like it was a big like question mark. There are probably some articles about it. But wait, what was your question? Like the percentage of people or
Well, I
what?
mean, mainly what issues? Because we can say populism, but what does that mean?
I think
I mean,
economic and social, just some sort of blend between the two.
well, and I think Gaza was in it. They did interview people on the street about this, and they found a lot of people who had voted for both of them. And one that people repeated quite a bit was Gaza, was the issue of why they went for Trump rather than Harris.
Because
Yeah,
ostensibly,
which I still think is
Ocasio-Cortez
like
wanted the war to end, ostensibly,
yeah. Well, she
and then
wanted
Trump
yeah,
promised to end the war.
ostensibly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's I still think the Republicans are way more yeah, okay, Biden didn't push hard for a ceasefire, didn't push at all, whatever. I think you would have to get some sort of clarification outside of the Israeli government who obviously can't be trusted by their word. Like there'd be reasons why they would like say this during a Trump administration to make the Biden administration look bad. But I don't know. I think the Trump admin is, they're talking about developing over Gaza. They're talking about just moving them out. Like that is, yes, not a stage that the Biden administration got to. Maybe they would have like pitched it differently.
Mhm.
We'll never know. But I don't think there's any hope that the Republicans are better for Gaza or better for the Gazan people than the Democrats were or would be had they had won.
Oh yeah,
It
absolutely.
would have been more the same, but you know,
I think aside from, and I don't want to dwell
the
on
war,
this too long. We
yeah,
we have talked about this before, but aside from the rhetoric from Trump about developing Gaza into like the new Dubai or whatever,
yeah,
I
whatever it
think
was,
the policy
Riviera or
would
something.
be what we're seeing now would be the exact same thing.
I was listening to this really good interview with Chris Hedges recently, and he thinks that really the only difference on policy between Biden and Trump is rhetorical. I do think there's some truth to that.
There's some
One thing
truth
that
to
has
that.
bothered me is that there's lack of reporting about uh, military funding going to Israel, U.S. approval of military funding going to Israel. And so it makes me wonder, one, is it still happening? I'm assuming it is still happening. Two, why has there been a drop off?
That's
because it
actually
makes me
interesting.
think
I
like it
haven't
was a
heard
wedge
anything
issue
about
during the
it.
election, right?
Yeah. When was the last time that we like,
Or is it
because
just not
those bills
surprising
were
that
going
Trump is
through
sending
with,
tax dollar money to Israel? It's not, but I would still like to see the articles.
it might have been part of a defense bill that just kind of, well, they only passed five bills. Like he only signed five bills since being president and has like 130 some executive orders. So
Okay.
it's got to be in one of those five bills, and it might be
Yeah.
in like budget or defense thing that went through. Let me look it up real quick.
No, that's a good point. Like, how often does he take any bill from Congress?
I think we have some like ongoing like payout in some program though that continuously funds Israel.
Yeah, I mean everything's
Isn't
additional
that right?
since October 7th, at least.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like I
I
think
believe we have like a
it's
pretty
annually like 2
substantial
billion.
baseline. Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And we should segue into that freaking documentary because that's like pretty hot on my mind. I do want to say one thing about war crimes, like how widespread that could be, because everyone always looks at like the leader, right? Or like the Secretary of State, or you know, the defense minister or something like that. But like how when it is a in this situation, everyone who voted to fund Israel is essentially equally like as guilty or compliant, right? Like, so you should look at, when they put the ICC puts out warrants for war criminals or whoever does the indicting of war criminals, UN or whatever, like how wide should that go?
I mean, I think
I
that we
guess
get
it's
to be
kind of an
arrested.
open
Like our
question.
tax dollars are paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
every US citizen. And
I
I'm
think
being
I
hyperbolic, obviously. I'm trying to
Yeah,
put
yeah.
but
No, you're
no,
taking
no,
the
but I mean, to answer you, Andrew, you could look at how Nuremberg was done. When we think of the Nuremberg trials, we think of the top generals
That's a good
of the
point.
Nazi Party, right? But that was just the first round of Nuremberg trials. There were rounds that came after that that was going after lower tier. Um, sorry, uh, cut that out, Joe. Yeah, there was a second round of Nuremberg trials that went down the ladder of judges, of different people at lower level civic positions, police, whatever the Nazis called it, but like police captains, that sort of thing, guards, soldiers, all of that. So like I think yeah, if you were going to dream world where this actually happens, at the top of the list you would have to look at top cabinet officials in the Israeli government, the Israeli military, of course. I think top level of the executive branch of the United States. So like Tony Blinken, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. But then, go down the line of yeah, military contractors as well as I think media in this day and age. I like if you're going to really talk
Yeah.
about people standing to account, then you need to talk about Fox News, the BBC, CNN,
Hmm.
MSNBC, all of these people that propagated these lies that helped this keep going. I mean, fucking Ben Shapiro,
Hmm.
uh, you know,
we'll start with Ben Shapiro.
start with Ben Shapiro. Actually, he's first.
Yeah, we'll do it like they do like kingpins, like we'll start with like a middleman. Just
Yeah,
like
and ladder
slowly
it
cut
up,
the head
squeeze
up
them.
to the snake.
We end up doing Ben Shapiro, and then everybody feels satiated enough after that that everyone else gets a
Yeah.
free
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
Get a couple good propagandists on our side, bring them back, learn what they know. Teach us about social media.
What were you looking up?
Oh, the most recent funding to Israel from the United States was in September 2024. There was a general freeze on all foreign aid programs initiated by the United States Department of U.S. State Department in 2025. Military assistance to Israel and Egypt was exempted. I think that just means like whatever was signed and appropriated still is going through, but everything else is frozen. So that is actually kind of, yeah, I know, right? Like the one thing that they
Uh, the shit we don't want.
There will be another.
I'm sure there's a lot of other. Yeah, there will be more.
Yeah.
It'll
Yeah.
be an interesting thing to happen though, because I do think a lot of like MAGA Republicans are just against funding foreign wars, which is a
Yeah.
redeeming quality of them.
I can't remember the last time we talked about this, but like obviously there's the MAGA base and there's the MAGA Congress people. And the MAGA
Yeah.
base is against funding the wars, but the MAGA's Congress people are for funding the wars, right? So I don't think anything's going to change. Unless you, again, confronting Chuck Grassley and people like that at town halls, making them feel
Uh,
uncomfortable.
Mhm.
do you think Marjorie Taylor Greene voted to fund? Because she's definitely like they what they would do during Biden is like mix in Ukraine funding with Israel funding, and that's how they
Yeah,
get it passed, right?
bundled.
It's a little
Yeah,
bit for everyone. Everyone could complain a little bit, but at the end of the day, the checks were being signed.
worst compromise ever.
But MTG, she gets both.
Yeah,
So I wonder.
reportedly does not receive any APAC money, probably because they don't need to pay her.
Yeah, she voted along with it.
If you look at APAC Tracker, which is merciless, trolling these people on Twitter, it's the Democrats who always get much more money. They're usually in the millions,
Yeah.
where I think
Mm.
it's like five figures for Republicans, and I think it's just because they're reliable votes.
Yeah, they don't need to.
Democrats are the ones
You
that
know,
you really have to pay.
yeah, they don't need the carrot. Well, should we talk about the settlers?
Louis, so
The Settlers of Catan.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you
So,
guys saw
are
the
those illegal
actual
settlements?
Settlers of Catan board game in the background of one of the shots. Like when he was
No
giving the
fucking
tour
way.
of his home, there literally was a Settlers of Catan, but it was in the Hebrew script.
oh my God.
What eagle eye you have?
I noticed a good board game.
No, they should have zoomed in on that because that's hilarious.
That's got to be one of the most aggressive games of Settlers you could ever play.
Yeah,
Who's
Yeah,
got the
what's the
grain
real one?
now?
it's fitting for them then. Much hay has been made in the last week about Louis Theroux's new documentary, The Settlers, on the BBC. For those of you who don't know, I think he's much more famous over here, but Louis Theroux is a really big documentary filmmaker, works for the BBC a lot, and actually did do a documentary on Israeli settlers in the West Bank over 10 years ago, I think back in 2011. And that's come out and been very eye-opening for a lot of people who don't tend to follow Israeli news quite closely, because I think Louis Theroux has a much more broad popularity, especially with your average Brit. He's a very, very trusted name in British journalism. What's been interesting about seeing him speak out about this over here is a lot of kind of normie people who would not necessarily be interested in this sort of thing will listen when Louis Theroux is creating a piece. As you can imagine, as soon as this documentary came out, the hits started coming, the attacks started coming of Louis Theroux is anti-Semitic, hilariously that the BBC is anti-Semitic. All of the old Hasbara hits were being taken out. And I was wondering, I thought it could be fun to we could kind of give our responses to the documentary in response to this article I found in the Jewish Chronicle by Jake Wallace Simmons.
Is that the print edition that you receive? Or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I still get it on Sundays. Right. So this is Jake Wallace Simmons, who's also he's a fellow Brit. He's a British journalist, broadcaster. I know he writes a lot for the Daily Telegraph. This is him writing in the Jewish Chronicle, which he is a former editor of. So here's an opinion piece. Title: To demonstrate, quote, impartiality, the BBC shows the worst Jews they can find. Through settler documentary doesn't illuminate, it rehearses the same old narrative. Uh, right after the bat, I have to say I find this hilarious that they're saying the BBC shows the worst Jews, to which I was like, does by worst Jews do they just mean Israelis?
Hmm,
Pretty loaded headline we've got there already. And again, for those of you who don't know, the BBC has been as bad of an actor as the New York Times or Fox News or anybody else in towing the line for the Israeli government. They're one of the worst. So to suggest that the BBC is in any way partial to the pro-Palestinian line is absolutely laughable on its face. I mean, this is like a documentary that really only Louis Theroux could get made with
got
his
it.
star power.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's something I had a question on. I thought the BBC was a little neutral, but I hadn't really been reading it in a long time. So they've
they're
been
not,
pretty pro-Israel.
oh
Uh,
yeah, they're
yeah.
terrible. Yeah. If you
So
look
for
at
this to come
like,
from them, it's like a shock.
yeah. Yeah,
Gotcha.
and it's really well, and it's really the only way it would be made is by Louis Theroux. He's the only person with
And
the
he
gravitas.
he mentioned at the beginning of the film he had made one. I don't know how long ago, like 4 years ago. It was before October 7th about
It
the
was like
illegal settlements.
it was like
So
10
this is
years
his
ago.
like, oh, it was 10 years ago. Yeah. And I don't
Yeah.
know, was that for the BBC as well?
Yeah, he does all of his documentaries for BBC Two,
Yeah.
I believe.
Okay.
So Wallace Simmons begins. What could have possessed the BBC to make a documentary about the very worst Jews they could find? I suppose they could argue that Louis Theroux's The Settlers was necessary for impartiality to be upheld, given how unbearably pro-Israel they have been of late. Vital film, gushed The Guardian. Masterpiece, declared The Independent. But seriously, folks, before I sat down to watch the program in which our hero revisits the hated West Bank to see just how much more savage it has become since the last time he was there in 2011, I made two wagers with myself. First, I bet that the fraudulent Hamas casualty figures would be mentioned within the first half hour, shorn of all meaningful context, such as I don't know the Israeli numbers or how many dead were combatants, which are quoted in just 5% of news reports. That is fucking nonsense, first of all. Second, I predicted the documentary would open with a scene shot in Hebron, which is without a doubt the very worst city in the territory, featuring an entire road, Shuhada Street, that is closed to Arabs and nets overhead to protect people in the market from objects lobbed out of the windows of Avraham Avenue settlement embedded in the town. That's what I'd do, I thought, if I were the BBC.
So
I
he's not
think,
denying this place exists.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I think
Yeah. Here's how on Earth, but
this is so funny because it's so I don't know much about Mr. I don't know much about Mr. Jake Wallace Simmons, but I kind of imagine he fancies himself sort of a liberal Zionist or sort of more centrist Zionist or whatever fake bullshit you have there. So he can admit that these places are terrible, but it's like it's somehow disingenuous to like show them. It's like, oh yeah, well,
Mm,
you didn't have to show the worst part of the West Bank. It's like, well, why would you do the fucking documentary and not show these things? Like, what I
hmm
don't know, I don't know exactly what your argument is here, Jake. It's like, yeah, of course it's bad if you focus on Hebron and the fact that people need nets over their heads to protect them from beer bottles being thrown at them by fucking settlers.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the homelessness in Los Angeles and go to fucking Malibu or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, and also, he can't. He does this throughout the article too, where he's talking about, oh well, they're choosing to focus on the worst settlers, but he does not give any counter argument with the good settlers who are nice and live in peace with the Palestinians. And I wonder why.
Mm.
Probably because there fucking aren't any. So. He continues, Reader, I was both righter and wronger. On the latter prognostication, my judgment was off. Our intrepid presenter managed to hold out for a full half hour before skipping along to watch the freak show of Hebron with his characteristic ironical stare. On the former, however, I had outdone myself. The phony casualty figures were quoted not in the first half hour, but within the first 3 minutes. What death toll does he want to give? Because I'm still of the opinion that when you say 43,000 dead, is pretty fucking generous, which I'm pretty sure is what Theroux uses in the beginning of this.
I got kind of lost with all the qualifiers. So this guy's saying he's not accurately saying the ratio of Israel to Palestinian, or he's not saying the casualty,
yeah,
like
because it's
innocent people to military, like Hamas fighters.
I
right,
think he's
right.
mad. Yeah, he's mad that they're not using the Israeli qualifiers,
Got
which
it.
I've never heard made real sense of, just using the total death toll, which is by the Hamas run.
How on earth? I
You
mean,
know,
what is the like? What is the ratio of like Israeli deaths has to be like less than 1% to whatever like casualties there are on the Palestinian
Not
sides, I imagine.
not the Israeli deaths, but the differentiation between combatants for, say, Hamas versus
Mm.
civilians. And
yeah,
the Israeli line is that
Oh,
there's many more combatants who have been killed
yeah,
than innocent civilians.
yeah. It's like
got it.
yes, there's 43,000 dead, but which by the way,
40,
it's
45,000 of them were Hamas.
yeah, it's yeah,
Still
it's
got work to
always
do. Yeah.
because Hamas has like
Jesus.
there's 2 million some people in Gaza, or there were, and 1.8 of them were active Hamas combatants,
Yeah.
is what Jake wishes we were saying.
Mm.
So, going on, what to say about this fine piece of work? For one thing, Theroux seems to have a far less developed radar for extremism when he strays into areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority. At one point, he has a coffee in Nablus, surrounded by the ancient architecture of the old city and undeniable fact of the hundreds of thousands of people living there and their aspirations for statehood, he tells us. The camera ranges over settled city, panning quickly past the many posters of young men wielding automatic weapons on the walls without any comment provided. Similarly, one night Theroux is interviewing some Arab men in a breeze-blocked building when some Israeli soldiers come past, the green light of their gun sights shining on the walls. Quote, "We are raised in this situation," his Arab interviewee laments. "It becomes a normal situation for us. When you were a kid, you just see this army invading your home in the day, in the night. You grow up in this injustice and reality. Awful, of course, but when it came to the reason why the soldiers had entered the village after dark, Theroux has a strange failure of curiosity."
I think this sums up the author's perspective a lot. It's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible, but like, come on. Like, we know why. Come on. You're not
Yeah.
being truthful about
He-
why it's also
yeah,
awful that these innocent
he's
people are.
Yeah, I mean that is and maybe saying he might fashion himself a liberal Zionist is completely incorrect, because this is the through line of Jake's point. This whole article is like, yes, the conditions in the West Bank are terrible, but they deserve it. So why are we even talking about it at all?
Yeah,
Seems to be his main point.
it makes me wonder what his ideal world is. What's utopia in the West Bank for Jake Wallace Simmons? I mean,
Yeah, and
do they not expect any kind of reaction resistance to living like this when there's checkpoints?
yeah, that's the
Wait, I
thing.
mean, you have to put netting over your home because you get thrown beer bottles by people who just decided one day from Brooklyn or Poland that they just wanted to arrive and start terrorizing you.
Yeah, or
Yeah, and
Austin,
by the way,
Texas, Russia. Those are the characters we met.
Yeah, Texas and
yeah,
Russia.
moving forward. Jake writes, when it comes to the Jews, however, the BBC producers sniff out, quote, ethno-nationalism like a bloodhound. It can't be that hard to do. Uh, Israelis are more like us Brits, I suppose, so their evil is easier to spot. To be fair to Theroux, the relationship he builds with 79-year-old Daniela Weiss, dubbed the godmother of the settler movement, is pretty entertaining. She is abrasive, animated, and comes across as crude in comparison with the urbane Englishman asking passive-aggressive questions. After returning to her house several times, he ends up joining a convoy in which he is led to Siderat, then to the Gaza border, where the army provides an escort. Suddenly, Weiss veers off the main road towards the strip, only to be stopped by two military jeeps. Why? To show her followers that Gaza is not some distant and unachievable land. It can be settled.
Yeah.
Okay, so the through interviews several people here in this documentary, but the most prominent voice, especially from the settler side of things, is a woman just mentioned by Jake, Daniela Weiss, who's, yes, the godmother of the settler movement, has been at it for what, 40 years or something like that. And the idea that he paints their relationship as entertaining and calls her abrasive, animated, and comes across as crude in comparison to Theroux is an insane thing to write. Like,
Mm.
it's just he portrays her like she's like some like quick talking old like waitress at a diner.
Yeah,
Like
crazy
like she
grandma.
like she's such a
Well-meaning.
pistol. And it's like
Yeah.
when you watch this documentary, I just kept thinking throughout, it was like Louis Theroux has fucking ice in his veins, because
Hmm.
this woman is the most alarming, horrifying, like Cruella de Vil type character in real life I have
Yeah.
ever seen. She is terrifying and is throughout the entire every time he's talking to her, she is just spouting genocidal, insane rhetoric to him. So to act like she's crude and like abrasive is such a wild understatement of who this woman is.
I really enjoyed him as a documentary filmmaker. I don't necessarily like when people make themselves the center of it, but like his personality as like just mirroring and talking, interfacing with these people. And then because he just says the thing that we're all thinking in the moment, where she's just going off about some crazy shit that's so illogical, and he's just like, yeah, but that's like sociopathic. Like I forget what she was talking about in the moment.
That
Um,
she doesn't care about Palestinian children.
And that's
Like
kind of
she's
the what almost everyone he talked to who was like pro settler
yeah.
that their thoughts were is like they if given their will they would come over here and kill us and take our land. And he goes, yeah, but isn't that like what you guys are doing to them? Like, don't you think they want to live like free and they're a little scared of you? Like, that's propaganda. Like that is like
Yeah.
totally what they say to like propaganda. You shouldn't say that. And it's like,
Yeah. And it's like
but
these
he calls her a
people,
sociopath at some point, and I was just like, thank you. That she's
yeah.
1000% like maniacal. The Cruella de Vil
It,
example is perfect.
I mean, to
It,
that point about the documentary and how Weiss is really built up as a I don't want to call her a villain in it, but as a character in the documentary, she kind of just weighs it off. She doesn't mind, and it really just shows the, I guess, commitment to the cause, if you will.
yeah.
And I think it's a testament to Thoreau's power that like that is how you feel coming out of the documentary about like not only Weiss,
Mm.
obviously, but the
Well,
entire movement.
she also
And I
had
think
like a pride to the allegations of her,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
so like he would call her like a sociopath, and she would take that as like, I am so passionate about this. I'm so willing to make it happen that like that's like a good thing almost.
Yeah, pride
yeah,
is
it's
the
a
right
badge of
word.
honor to her. It's a
Hmm.
badge of honor to her. And that's what you get. I mean, the people settling the West Bank are the biggest extremists. I think there's
Yeah.
people who passively support the genocide, and there's people who are like wanting to be on the front lines, like the tip of the spear for it. Even I think one of the guys even calls them the tip of the spear. One of the settlers does
Yeah, the
within
guy
this,
from
and it's
Texas.
like it's
Yeah, the dude
these
from Texas was
people.
wild.
Yeah, these people are zealots. And to your point though, Andrew, I think a really funny thing as soon as the knives started coming out for Louis Theroux online, before I had actually watched the documentary, uh, of like how he was portraying these people in a bad light, um, is because I know Louis Theroux's documentary style, and he actually doesn't, in comparison to a lot of filmmakers, he doesn't editorialize that much. Like he really just goes to places and lets people speak for themselves, and then he'll
Hmm.
ask the honest question there. But like you don't see him like pushing the narrative anywhere. So like the idea that he's like painting these people in a bad light, it's like which for Western Zionists, it's like, yeah, he is, because all you have to do to paint Israeli Zionists in a bad light is let them talk, and
Hmm.
they will do it for you.
And if I were to be generous to, I forget the author's name here. I mean, there is always two sides to a coin. Uh, and like, yeah, you can editorialize without giving an opinion. You can edit and by omission, editorialize, which might be what he's saying here.
Hmm.
Like, you're
But
not
he
showing
kind
the
of,
full picture, but that's impossible to do if you're showing any type of media or I don't know, that
but
gets a little philosophical, but
this is always what you get, though, from these Zionist rebuttal opinion pieces that you get from like the Ben Shapiro's or the Barry Weiss's of the world, is
yeah.
like they'll be like they're not giving you the full picture, but then they have nothing to offer to refute this side of the picture because
I
there
feel
isn't anything. It's
Well,
like
I
there
feel like
isn't
when
a
they
good,
do, it gets very like back in, 5000
yeah, and
BC.
the time, yeah,
It
King
just gets very
David said
weird. You're like,
this.
how
Yeah.
the fuck am I supposed to argue with that? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah. It
that's all
becomes
they
like
have.
ancestral
They
land
have
blame.
yeah,
Yeah.
they have to go back to like biblical scripture or just flat out lying.
which was touched upon in this, and I find it
Yeah.
very it enrages me, and we kind of talked about it. I don't want to slam anyone for like their religious opinions, but like yeah, when you start using religion as a reason to do this to other human beings who are just living their lives, they're here for like 100 years max, and like you're like, this book told me that I belong here and your people should die. It's like that's no, you don't have a right to do that. I don't care what that stupid book says. I don't care what you named it thousands of years ago. Like these people are here now. You got to find a way to like live there and be nice. Stop murdering children.
Jake does try to he tries to make like a reasoned rebuttal to this, but he really falls short because I
We
don't
should
think he has any ground to stand on.
we should
So
try
I
to
just
find
want
a pro-Israel like version of this. Like, look how nice everyone is. Look at how mean they are.
yeah, but they could never do that because they're supremacists. So they could
It's
never
got to
stomach
exist.
it. They could never stomach it, like trying to have like a portrayal of the West Bank where everyone's like happy, even if it was completely astroturf. They don't want to do that. Because if you start painting that reality, then the questions arise of like, oh, so you two can live in peace
Ah,
and
yeah. Okay.
coexist. So no, they will never
I
do
see what
that.
you mean.
Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
whole argument, there's no good argument for this for like a liberal Zionist perspective, because the only way to make this argument from the Zionist perspective is that these people are animals who can't exist here.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then you have to go towards the one state solution with equal rights. But obviously we can't have that. That's not good either. So you're never going to get that. Back to Jake. As the program wears on, Theroux becomes increasingly confrontational with the endless checkpoints at which soldiers ask him to present his passport. I get that. In 2014, a few years after he made his first West Bank documentary, Ultra Zionists, I too made a feature there called Meet the Settlers. It's like, hey, just so you guys
Shameless
know,
plug.
The
It should be
settlers.
hyperlinked.
he's clearly jealous. No one cares about your shitty documentary, Jake. I remember well the unpleasantness of Hebron, the swaggering Yahoos and the resentful Palestinians. I remember the queues at the checkpoints. I remember how the whole thing gets under your skin. Yeah, I'm sure it gets under your fucking skin to have soldiers coming up to you with rifles and asking for your papers and going through arbitrary checkpoints
Don't you just hate
every
traffic on your
fucking turn.
commute?
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
ugh,
I get it.
Using a cliche as
ugh.
direction. Yeah.
The A train in Midtown, am I right? Like, get the fuck out of here. So, anyway, the problem really is the framing. Not to defend the Ben Gavirs of the world, oh yeah, we wouldn't want that, but entirely predictable. Theroux provides the kind of patrician, sneering perspective that, in the eyes of the BBC, passes for impartiality. He gets quite cross towards the end and makes an impassioned plea for a one-state solution in which everybody has, quote, equal rights. Now, there's a man who never had to fear for the lives of his children. There's a man who has not thought very much about October 7th. In the next breath, he accuses Weiss of being sociopathic. This is backed up by many suggestive scenes in which, for instance, the cameraman manages to frame settler joviality with the backdrop of smoking Gaza. Okay,
I
that
thought that's
last
a Hollywood
line,
set. Yeah.
yeah, well, that line is fucking egregious because that is what it is. So this is backed up by many suggestive scenes in which, for instance, the cameraman manages to frame settler joviality with a backdrop of smoking Gaza. That's not staged. There's an
Mhm.
observation deck. There's several in the West Bank and other parts of Israel where Israelis go to the watch the fucking carnage happening in Gaza. They bring their children. The scene in question right there is a man with his daughter pointing out to the ruins of Gaza and saying, "Look at this. Isn't this wonderful?" So like
That's
the
wild.
idea that this is suggestive or that he's like steering the audience is absolute bullshit.
Literally reality, but
Just a few more lines and then the whole thing made me reflect upon how far apart societies with similar foundational values can drift when one is regularly called upon to fight for its life against genocidal enemies, while the other has no higher expression of nationhood than Paddington Bear. Yet the Bearites can't stop with the lectures. It's almost comical.
What the fuck is
Also,
turnpike?
Jake is fucking British and lives in London. Get fucked. It's like you went to Oxford. You've never had, I'm sure you didn't even serve in the IDF, you fucking liar. Okay. Overall, it was impossible to form a proper opinion on the people we met due to the baked-in bias. Here was the world, according to the BBC, in which Theroux's every encounter happened to support the conclusions with which he had left Heathrow. Right at the end, he dispenses with his trademark light touch and treats us to a bit of raw dogma. Quote, the settler dream shows no sign of abating, along with the dislocation, devastation, and death that follows inevitably in its train. He says, so here's the takeaway. The Jews are to blame for the bloodshed, not the Arabs, who tried to murder them from the start, which is what we're supposed to think all along.
To Wallace Simpson, Jake Wallace Simpson, the author of this piece, the only reason the BBC published this and that the reason it's so biased is to be more neutral and objective in their reporting about the recent Israeli-Palestine conflict.
Yeah,
That's his whole premise.
I guess, he can at least, yeah, this is the other side at least, which is, again, it's the
Down to the camera
contradict,
angles of,
yeah, the
children looking
contradictions
at
in
burning
this
houses.
article. He wants to rail against the BBC for commissioning this, but at the same time, recognizes how pro-Israel the BBC is. One of the biggest problems I have with this article is again this idea that you're cherry picking and showing the worst Jews. Um, which, by the way, if we're going to, who are the worst Jews, Jake? Well, I guess the worst Jews are the entire settler movement. Well, I'm sorry, but the entire settler movement, the entire West Bank settlements are possible and are propped up by the Israeli government. They are protected by the Israeli media. Daniela Weiss has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by professors at the top two Israeli universities. So, like, don't tell me that these people actually do not represent the project of Israel.
I would love to hear Jake's thoughts on why he thinks that these settlements are outlawed illegally. Or what am I trying to say?
Are illegal under international law?
Yes, are illegal under international law. Why these settlements are illegal under international law.
Yeah. Notice that he never touches on that in this article.
Yeah.
That every governing body in the rest of the entire fucking world recognizes that these are war crimes and illegal settlements just by and
Theroux
and
mentions that in
they
the documentary they're illegal under Israeli law, right?
yeah, technically,
Yeah.
but they're still supported. And it's like they
Yeah.
show the process really clearly of how these settlements work. And it's really fucking chilling. Like they set up base camps near towns like so in like tents and caravans and that sort of thing. And by the way, this isn't me talking or this isn't Louis Theroux talking. This is the settlers in the documentary telling them how they do it, where they set up these base camps near towns and then they slowly just move their way in and ransack people's homes and take them over. And these fucking people, like everyone you see, they're walking around with AR-15s just strapped around their bodies. It's
And
like,
Danielle brings this up. She goes, "Yes, the government can't do this, but the peop our project needs
Yeah.
to first establish a reason why the government would come in and say, 'Hey, this is logical. It's reasonable for us to claim these lands.' Like the government can't just come in and claim the lands, but like if our people are there and they're settled, then that would give us a buy or a
yeah,
basis to do this. So it's kind of like this extra governmental program. And she boasts about how like, oh, I've got Netanyahu's number. He knows about me. He wants this to happen, but like, politically can't say it.
And I think Theroux makes a great connection with the settler from Texas who does literally walk around with an
Man,
AR-15.
that guy got
yeah,
under my skin so much. I don't know if it's because
oh,
he was
yeah,
American or
This is
just
yeah.
definitely
his
because he's
vibe.
American. Yeah.
I think so. I hated him the most.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's something worth mentioning. I don't know if you actually see a single Israeli in this movie who was born in Israel. They're
Yeah.
all the settlers you talk to. So you have got Daniela Weiss, who I believe is Polish.
Oh,
Um,
really? Wow.
yeah. I believe I think so, Polish. Yeah. And but then most of the settlers you see are American. And then you have like when you hear from IDF soldiers, like the one, by the way,
I can
every
imagine.
IDF soldier, I wonder why, is wearing like a face mask when they know they're about to be on camera. But they have a long interaction with one IDF soldier who has a thick French accent. You have another guy with a Russian accent. So you have all of these, all of these people claiming it's their ancestral land who are not even born in Israel.
Yeah. Do you guys want to talk about that Trump interview?
Yeah, I watched it today.
Oh
Yeah. Okay.
man.
That was kind of old school Trump. I felt like that was kind of back to like 2016 Trump in certain
He
ways.
was pitching some heaters for sure. He's like,
Yeah.
I look, I gave this to you because I've never heard of you.
Yeah. Hold on. We'll set it up. So it's been 100 days. Feels like it's been 100 years. Trump
Yeah.
joined ABC to talk about the first 100 days. It's a 45-minute interview.
Yeah, it's supposed to be sort of a reflection on his first 100 days, and I guess the only thing I'll say to it for anybody who hasn't watched it, there's barely any substantive content in this entire interview.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
repeating claims that he's made before about on every
Yeah,
subject that he's made before.
and then just is attacking the reporter like a lot towards the end.
Yeah.
So Trump got hung up on there were some softballs, obviously, like feeding the beast, like, oh, you did great with immigration, numbers are down, blah blah. But then it's funny to me that the thing that didn't upset Trump the most was like, hey, by the way, like a lot of people are upset thinking you're overstepping your boundaries and like taking too much power. He didn't give a fuck about that. He goes,
No.
God, what's Terry something? Because he calls him Terry. He's like Terry, 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 like talking to like a bad pet. Like, get down, Terry. Um, he was like Terry. Yeah, I just don't know why you asked such rude questions after he disagreed with him about the tattoos on Garcia's knuckles. Like we've all seen the photo by now, but it's like Garcia has like a smiley face, a weed, something, and then above it, someone printed out a piece of paper with like, Word document text saying MS-13 as like a cipher translating it. And Terry was like, I mean, it could be interpreted that way. Trump doubled down and goes, no, it said it. It said MS-13. And this is where I think Terry kind of fucked up. Like, I was pretty upset that he wasn't like, so just to clarify, you actually think that was on his hand? It was clear as day as that's what Trump meant, but like he didn't like put him in a position to be like, yeah, it says MS-13 on his hand. That
Yeah.
and he's like, you want me to grab the photo? I'd have been like, yes, grab the photo. I'd be like, so you think those letters?
Yeah.
And I mean, he's 80 years old or something. Trump is, right? If he can't discern between that stupid image and what's real in that image or not, because I really do believe that wasn't him putting on an act. I really do think Trump like couldn't. He genuinely was like duped by that stupid Photoshop job.
You think
Like
so?
I just don't think
Probably.
I don't think his reasoning skills are that good.
Hmm.
Well, and I think, and there's a lot of reporting on this that it seems like Stephen Miller is really running the deportation show, like all the immigration policy. So
Makes sense.
I think he's really just taking Stephen Miller at his word.
Yeah.
That makes sense too, because Stephen Miller
Yeah,
was the one who lied about the Supreme Court decision in front of Trump.
yeah,
Wait, what
Yeah.
happened?
yeah,
Well, it was I forget the woman's name, but she asked a bunch of questions or a couple questions. I think it was the interview where the El Salvadorian president was there,
Hmm.
and there's a question afterwards, like the Supreme Court asked you to facilitate this, and then Steve Miller's like, "That's not true. That didn't happen." Like the Supreme Court sided with us and
yeah.
said that we were right, and it was clearly not. The decision was not for what they had done.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just openly lying. I don't think Trump has the nuance to really understand what the Supreme Court like hands down.
I don't think he
Me
really
projecting,
cares.
or I don't think he really
Um,
cares either, even if he does. But he probably heard something from someone told him, and he believes that. And Stephen Miller would be the guy in that position to do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So it
I
makes
also
sense.
think Trump's, I mean, I think Trump governs, like a CEO would in this way, where if he hears, he's not going to read the fine print. So if it's like, oh, there was a Supreme Court ruling about the deportations, and he's like, Trump's going to be like, is it a problem? And then someone like Stephen Miller going to go, it's not a problem, and he's going to go,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Like, I think
Yeah,
that's,
I mean,
I think that's likely how these moments
I think
go.
he said as much in the interview. He goes, "That's not what my lawyers told me," or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's
that's not what my
deferring a
lawyers say.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
He's bl
people tell
he,
me it's not a problem. So,
yeah.
and he's blending it like his own power with like delegation of power. He's like, I can't do that, or I don't care to do that. I think the only like substantive thing that came out during this was him openly saying he's like, I could call the president of El Salvador and ask for him back if he was a good guy. I don't think he is, and I'm not going to.
So openly define the court order.
Yeah,
I mean, not that they haven't been before, but that was, to me, the most egregious example.
yeah.
yeah.
My
Saying that he
sister.
could do it, will not do it. They could facilitate it.
Yeah, I think so. It could. Yeah. So there's a difference between facilitate and effectuate, and I guess that's like the
Okay.
hang up. So
Yeah.
he is not directed by the Supreme Court to effectuate the order. He's ordered to facilitate the order.
Okay.
I know this is again, law is so fucking dumb, but it's just a difference of language. But the person who gave the initial order to facilitate came back and ordered him to effectuate. And then I think that might go to the Supreme Court, in which case there should be another like ruling on it.
One thing that finally came out, and I wouldn't call this substantive, but something that I found interesting was there's been a long talk of this, or Garcia was sent as an error on accident, basically. And then
Mhm.
Trump threw under the bus the person that claimed that it was an error, said it wasn't someone that he appointed, and it didn't act like they fired this person, but did basically say they should have not said this was done in error. The deportation was done
S-
in error.
Someone did get fired, but I forget if it was the person who made the error or the person who called it out as an error.
It had to be the latter. At least the way that he was suggesting what happened, it seems like it would be the latter, right? He's
Yeah.
like, you act like this person is so great who claimed this was an error, but I didn't appoint this person. So again, it does come back to like they feel like this deportation was right.
Yeah, I don't think they give a fuck if it's
Well,
right or not.
we talked about like, basically the error language was kind of like a fig leaf, if you will, right?
Sure, sure, sure. It was probably the most substantial part, I would say,
Yeah,
is
I
just
guess.
the
Well, and
whole
then he came
what are the
back
other
to it again
questions?
too.
That's what I was talking about. Like he didn't care about the other stuff. He
Yeah.
brought up the image again after they moved on to
Yeah.
what Ukraine, which was the last
Yeah.
topic. He's
That
like,
one
I
was
would
weird.
lie if you didn't doubt everything I said, like this photo. It's just like that it pissed him off so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one because a lot of times you can like for better or worse, whatever your opinion is on him, he's pretty good at keeping on the topic that he wants to be on. And usually, like, he did that really well in the Rogan podcast, where
Hmm.
it's like he just keeps the bus moving forward, right? So you
Yep.
never really have time to latch on. Um, Not that Rogan pushed back on anything really, but he keeps the conversation moving forward, so you never really are able to do follow-ups or whatever. So it was really weird to see him be like, actually, I want to go back to that thing and talk about it because
Yeah.
it really bothered him.
Well, that's why I
That
think he genuinely thought it was real. Like he thought he was on
yeah.
firm
Yeah.
ground there. I think that's why what like it really bothered him that he's like, let's move on. And if I were the reporter, I would not have moved on. That is like
Yeah.
gold to watch this guy just bury himself in the stupidest fucking thing.
Yeah, the reporter, I can't remember. Can we look up his name? What was it? Jake? No, Jake was who we
Something
just read.
Terry something.
Terry. Oh yeah.
Terry Terryson.
Yeah, Terry Terryson. I mean, he definitely like shit the bed on this, but I always have to extend a little bit of an olive branch to anybody who has to interview Trump because like the idea of doing that like Mehdi Hassan style like combative like interview thing, like I don't know if even if you're the best of the best at that sort of interview style, I don't we don't have any proof that that would work against Trump because he's just gonna, you're
Right.
just he's
He
just
likes
a brick
combative,
wall.
I
Yeah, he
think
likes it. So
and his
he'll
base
go
loves it.
he'll go, he'll go back and forth with you all day on shit like that. So it's like it's not really productive. At the same time, though, the guy being and which I guess is the way like leaning reporters feel like they're getting one over on him because it's like, all right, let's just move on. Like the people will decide. But
what else are you
it
supposed to
didn't,
do?
yeah, exactly. It's like, what could he have done? But also, it did make him look like a pussy.
Yeah,
I
it
don't.
does. I mean, watching that whole
I
interview,
th-
and I started to take a click back about just thinking about Trump itself. It's like he is such a media created monster. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
what after The Apprentice, and now they have to deal with this person who's allowed to be brash, who's allowed to be stubborn, who's allowed to be insulting. They have to deal with that person in the seat of power.
Yeah. I would never interview or debate that man. I don't think no matter who you are, there's no way you come out of that not looking like a bitch.
Yeah.
This came to me, this felt like something that ABC wanted to do for Trump, like a puff piece kind of to like get on his good side again. I don't think it
Yeah.
was meant to be combative. I think they literally just hit a bump and Trump kind of didn't let it go.
But don't you think they
Um,
Yeah.
want it to be combative? I think that's the whole
who
point.
you think ABC wanted it to be combative?
I mean, it's definitely going to get more clicks, right?
Uh,
Those
yeah, but
moments are definitely going to garner attention.
I think these legacy media companies are shitting their pants about like if they're gonna get their like license pulled or something. The way they're
I think there's something there. I think they're afraid of him now. I didn't used to think that, but
genuinely, yeah. I don't
it
know
felt
what like a
softball.
we talked to Ryan Groom about this. Like I think there's more to like the media landscape and like what it means to have your license pulled, like getting taken out of the press pool, like the AP. Um, and the way that they're this is kind of a segue, but so they've injected a bunch of other like so well there's like the social
But
media influencer media
as I
pool
say, we
now.
should talk about
We
that.
should
Yeah.
talk about that. And then there's like the people who are in the standing room at the press briefing.
I think Tim Pool
Like
now
those
has a
people,
spot.
yeah, those people are more like citizen journalist types. And then there's the influencers who are just dogmatic followers who I don't even know. I've never heard of any of these people. I just saw the first question being asked. It wasn't even a question. It was like literally breaking their arm, jerking off Trump. But
There was
Yeah,
something
I
about how
mean,
the
they're
that
economy is
was
just
going
there
to
wild.
to suck his
improve.
dick.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
There's something
What?
about how the economy is definitely going to improve by 2026. That was the quote
Yeah,
Oh,
at the influencer summit.
she said the
it's
thing about
so,
thank you. I can now understand my Uber drivers in Miami too.
I
Yeah.
did not hear that one.
it's so embarrassing. Like, yeah, like Tim Pool and all of them, like, are just like, are you worried that the economy is going to be too good? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
it's like you pussies. Like,
Well, I want to go back to this. I've been calling it a persecution complex, and obviously we've known that Trump feels like he's had this for a long time. And in the way that has gone out to the influencers is just, I think it's going to eventually jump the shark. It's going to be what eventually kills the movement. I came across this on Twitter the other day, and it was, like a 30-second video of some young woman confronting this fellow young man in a McDonald's, and she tries to steal his "Make America Great Again" hat.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, everybody could just call it out as staged, right? And it clearly, I think the original poster finally admitted that it was staged. And it's just, I think this is just becoming their downfall, or it will become their
Mm,
downfall, right? I mean, like
hopefully.
I don't know, this persecution complex is just, it's exactly what they made fun of the people on the left for years.
yeah.
Now they're embracing it.
Well, again, it's like I've said before, it's like this Israelification of MAGA, where it's like, oh, we're the tough guys, we're the America first and everything, but also everyone's so mean to us and it's not fair. And it's
Yeah.
like you don't get to have both. And like they've really been at that persecution complex now when they have full power. Like
Yeah.
they were riding high for like a month after he got elected. We're like, yeah, we own everything. You can't do nothing. It's our time now. And then like immediately they're like, the left is so mean to us. And it's just like, what left? Like, no one's doing anything to you. Like, no
No.
one's
What
like, what are
left?
you
Yeah.
talking about? It's like all of a sudden we've got this like resurgence of Marxism that I don't know where that is. I'd like to see more of it. All these Marxist
Yeah.
judges and Marxist
If
fucking
they have a
Congress
list, let
people
me
coming
find it,
at it.
dude.
Yeah.
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 Where do where do I
Where do I
send my
sign up?
money?
Not act blue.
I did see this, and I don't trust polls at all, but Trump's approval rating is, of course, dropping, but Democrats is still lower.
Hmm.
I
All
mean, you
right.
can't be surprised.
That tracks.
Yeah. I don't know if it was specifically Chuck Schumer or if it was Democrats in general.
What's the difference?
Again, I would believe both.
Yeah, I mean, it should. Like Andrew, you were saying earlier, like AOC is probably like nominally the closest to our political viewpoint. But like,
Yeah.
I think for that reason, it's necessary that she should get even more scrutiny from me. Because if you actually claim to represent my values and then you do not, then I
Yeah.
actually have a bigger problem with you than a MAGA congressperson who outright tells me that it's like their whole goal is to make it a white nation
And that's what I like that the
and take
woman
away
said. It's
any
like
benefits. Yeah.
that woman who was like, at least I know where the Republicans stand. You're a
Yeah.
snake.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree. Like I go back and forth on it. I understand completely what you're saying.
But
It's
the
like,
thing is, MAGA does not exist without the Democrats sucking as much as they do. That's just a fact. And it's like,
yeah.
and I think people who want to be Democratic voters have to reconcile the fact that what is happening right now under Trump is infinitely more preferable to them than a Bernie presidency or a real left like is infinitely more they would rather have MAGA fascism than socialism or
I
just
just
left-wing populism. So I do think they deserve all that scrutiny, even more so until they actually are in opposition, or they'll just, keep doing what they're doing until they slowly get just pushed into the ocean. And and then you really do just have American fascism.
I agree to criticize like AOC and the more progressive members. Like obviously any member of Congress should be criticized like almost to devastating amount just because like you
Constantly,
are
constantly. Yeah.
constantly that's part of your job. You just should take shit and eat shit. Um,
Yeah.
and then do your best to represent the people who are talking shit about you. That's just the way politics should be. But I would much rather see the bottom, like the worst centrist Democrats, like the energy being focused on them. I really think AOC is like a step forward for the Democratic Party. I'd much rather see her than that like 75-year-old who just stepped down from whatever committee. Not just because she's young. No, I just think she's more progressive, and I think that's the way that the party should be. I think more people will look more favorably upon the party, and it would be more of what I would like to see out of it. But I think in general, like it would be a more like working person's party if these policies that she stands for actually go through. Yes, she simps for the DNC sometimes. I think that's just politics. I know it sucks,
Yeah.
but it's better to have her right on 10% of the issues than 0%, or have someone in there, not just her. Have someone in there that's right about 10% and aligns with me 10% than 0%. And I think what we need to do is root out the Chuck Schumers of the party. Get people in there like 5, 10, 20. Hopefully one day we get someone who's like 50% not corporately like donated to, and like getting all their money from APAC and signing away like any free thinking ability and things that will actually benefit their constituency, not just like the corporate aspects of being a politician.
You know what? I think that might be the issue of having a big tent. Because if I'm a Republican voter,
Partially, yeah.
I feel like I probably agree with them 99% of the time. Whereas if I'm a Democrat voter, which I used to be, I would agree with them, like to your point, maybe 10% of the time.
I think we also have different ideologies on if the Democratic Party is worth saving. and that's like part of it is, I think right now it's the only structure we have in place until there is like a meaningful or at least like a sign of like a transition. And then we could like escalate that transition or what's it called? Accelerate the transition. I think there needs to be, but we haven't seen any signs of transformation to a new party from the old Democratic Party to an they ran Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and then Kamala Harris. And Trump won two of those three.
Yeah.
Those were three shitty candidates. They are not really meaningfully. And I don't know. I mean, fool me once, right? One thing I did want to say was, are you familiar with like the Christian persecution TikTok girls? Are you
No.
familiar with this meme?
It
Put
like
it on.
Okay.
baptize me.
Okay. So go it's another like MAGA influencer type of thing, but it's like it's always a girl crying on her bed, filming herself, and then like I don't know, some stupid music's playing, but then like the caption's like, Mom and Dad kicked me out because I'm a Christian.
Oh yeah, I have seen
You've
this.
seen
Yeah.
those?
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like mom and dad kicked me out because I'm a Christian. Like it was like basically like mom and dad are like pansexual liberals who hate me for
Okay.
being MAGA. And then it's like, but I found my new calling and like now I paint like MAGA oil paintings or
Yes.
something.
I forgot there's like a commercial aspect to it. It's like, please help me
Jeez.
buy my
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
like oil paintings of like Trump with an eagle and shit. It's great. I don't know if those, yeah, I don't know if there was ever like an original thing of that was real. I don't think most of them are at this point, but those are great.
I want to go
Okay.
back to what you were saying, Andrew, and
Yeah, let me
with transitioning to the party from basically the 2024 loss, right? If we start there.
yeah. I'm just saying if there's like any hope in restoring the party or like putting something in there that's like actually meaningful to people, it would be people with ideas and policies more like AOC.
I think that's true.
But
And
if
it
there's not, then we need to just accelerate the downfall of the DNC and then have the rebirth of something else. And
it
we're in this
reminds
Whoop,
weird middle
whoop.
ground right now.
it
I
reminds me
know,
of
Ben, I
something.
know that you're there. I'm just so torn. I see it both
Kill
ways.
it.
Well,
Kill it.
just
There's no redeeming it. And by the way, just to your point of third parties, of like a new party, the biggest hindrance to leftism in the United States is not the Republican Party. It's the
Right.
Democratic Party. The Democratic Party spends more time in small elections fighting off the Green Party or the Socialist Party than the Republican Party ever does, because the Republican Party knows that the Democrats are going to do it for them. And obviously, the best example we have is 2016 and 2020 of them poleaxing Bernie Sanders, who,
Hmm.
by the way, seeing how he's done, how he's comported himself in the last 5 years, and how he's conducted his career, they know damn well that if he actually got into the White House, that he would backpedal on a lot of the stuff. I truly believe that. Like, I don't think if we would have had a Sanders presidency that we would be seeing an overhaul of the government like what we're seeing with Donald Trump right now. They know
Well,
that he wouldn't have done that, and they did it anyway. They did it anyway, even though he would have just been way too procedural about everything and probably wouldn't have gotten that much done. But
oh,
the thing
he
is,
wouldn't have grabbed the power. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
yeah, yeah, he wouldn't have. It would not have been this huge circuit breaker moment like what we're seeing with Trump this time. So they know that and they did it anyway. So what does that tell you? I mean, this party will do anything just to perish even the idea of leftist populism in people's minds, and they will continue to do that. So yes, they need to be taken back outside the woodshed and shot the party
it
as a
reminds me of
whole.
something that came up in that interview. Another takeaway I had was there was a lot of talk on issues, right? I don't think there was anything substantive. It was a lot of just Trump very much being himself. But the topics, and this was really what defined him in the 2024 candidacy, immigration, war, conflict, if you will, the economy,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And another thing that Chris Hedges mentions in that really good interview is that like the Democrats spent a lot of the time arguing over messaging. during the 2024 election. And it just
Yeah.
makes me wonder, like, looking forward, where do you think, if you want to save the Democratic Party, where do you think the issue, what do you think their issue should be?
Their topics of conversation or
Sure.
the
Yeah.
issues with the party.
I would say topic
Sorry, I
of
just
conversation. Like, what would
okay.
appeal to voters?
When you said issues, I wasn't sure if like what their issue should be or their issue. Okay. Um, I do honestly, I know like I wouldn't say messaging is the issue. I'll do that first, and I'll do the issues. I
Mhm.
mean, one, I'll just the issues are easy. It just should be like economic populism. It should
Mhm.
be that the housing market's insane. The like cost of living is terrible. And actually, I would love to see them take like a technocratic standpoint on it. Be like, we're gonna get the best fucking economists to come in here, sort out the trade deals. We're gonna do things competently. And I
Mhm.
think that would be not only just a good policy, it would be a good approach and a good message. I'm so jealous of who Canada just put in as their prime minister because he's, you know, a fucking like brilliant globalist economist.
Mhm.
And we have this dunce who has identified a lot of great or a lot of like bad things and like in a lot of things, painful issues that could be tackled, but he's doing them so ineffectively. But I don't know. I think like yeah, I think universal healthcare as like as unachievable as it seems, I think that would be a great issue to like start talking about again.
Mhm.
Healthcare in America is the fucking worst. It doesn't make any sense. I think a lot of people hate it. And it would be very popular to talk about and try to remedy.
Well, there you
Uh,
have it, folks. Andrew wants a globalist future for the United States. He wants us to be governed by Klaus Schwab and the Trilateral Commission.
it's
I,
better than what we're doing right now, honestly.
I'm gonna call Alex Jones, tell him about you.
I'm fine.
we'll set up the debate. I do think the
But
next Democratic candidate is going to be the most technocratic elite candidate, just as a response.
it
I
has to
think people
be.
are going to want the perceived steady hand, and
It just
they thought they had that with Biden.
They thought they had it with Clinton.
Yeah, I mean Clinton was the most technocratic.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
and
but that
one of
they're
the
politicians.
claims
Like
that
I
they
would
want
make
can,
her a great candidate was her experience.
yeah,
Not to
yeah,
mention the experience was what fucking killed her, you know?
I'm just
yeah.
also very upset that we wasted all of our like political capital of like we want change, we want things to like we want the government to work differently. And then we elected fucking a billionaire Donald Trump to do it and he
Yeah,
sucks at it. And there is going to be a reaction to where everyone's just like, dude, let's just like make it so the earth doesn't fall out from under us.
yeah,
And yeah, I would prefer that right now too. Like
yeah,
I would rather another fucking Biden than this, unfortunately, because this is such a terrible alternative. But like I would rather it be between a Biden and a progressive.
yeah. I wonder, I think they'll even lose all the progressive pretense because I think populism will be so ruined after these 4 years that, yeah, they will just want
Yeah.
one who looks like Mark Carney.
Yeah, you think yeah, populism is going to be weird. It's going to be like a taboo subject, I wonder if like you start talking like that. Or it could be we could maybe finally get a matchup of like maybe it'll be like a JD Vance trying to be a populist and then like the Democrats will actually put like a populist up.
Yeah,
Doubtful. But
yeah,
I think JD Vance is almost a lock in for the
yeah.
follow up. Yeah.
What was the takeaway with Trump's involvement? Because it sounded like Pierre Poilievre was going to win, but then Trump got involved.
Yeah. Well, I don't know a ton about it, but like the Conservative Party did broadly do quite well in the provinces. It's just in the prime minister seat, Pierre Poilievre lost. So it's not like it was a left-wing wave that hit
Right.
Canada. It was actually a lot. There was a lot of picking seats picked up by the Conservative Party and a lot of seats lost by the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just the prime minister was,
Yeah,
was
I
that.
don't know how common it is in a parliamentary government for there to be an outright majority with one party.
Hmm.
I don't I don't know from the UK. But
Hmm.
Ben, do you know? Is there ever does that ever happen?
Yeah, that might actually be a
Well,
good segue to talk about the UK local elections quickly.
yeah. UK had local councilman elections over the weekend. And the big story of that was Reform Party picked up, I think, somewhere around 600 seats.
It was their biggest win yet, right?
But yeah, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, by the way, they still have less seats than like throughout throughout the United Kingdom. Like the Tories, the Labour Party, the Green Party still occupy more seats than Reform by a long shot.
Yeah.
But it sort of is I don't know, it's a chilling message of what's to come, possibly. If Nigel Farage is kind of riding this wave of dissatisfaction with the Labour government that's going on right now, which is in a lot of ways a really legitimate one. Keir Starmer has been a disaster, and he's really not liked, and he's really not making any efforts um,
So that
to
honeymoon phase is
to
over.
dis there never was a honeymoon. I mean, it was pretty bad from the
People
beginning.
were
And
stoked that the Tories were out, right?
yeah, they were stoked that
That
the
was all they
Tories
were
were
stoked
out, but
for, right?
but no one was super excited ever about Keir Starmer. And similarly to the Canada election, it was or when Labour took over, it wasn't so much a win for Labour as it was a loss for the Tories. It was
Yeah.
that Labour actually had like one of its worst elections in modern history, but the Tories just ate shit so bad that Labour happened to pick up the scraps and get a majority government. But
I don't really follow UK politics or at least like the issue so much, but the Conservatives had a crisis on their hands. Inflation was high, right? It was an
mhm.
economic issue in that Labor just inherited all of that. And I don't know if they proposed any kind of solutions to the problem.
They have, and all of them affect the poorest people. And
It's austerity, right?
yeah, it's austerity, and Starmer is a deeply, deeply evil man. And some of the policies that he's enacted in his short time at Downing Street are things that I don't even know if you would see a Tory prime minister enact some of these policies. It's really wild. I mean, just to name a few, the abolition of winter fuel payments. These were subsidies for fuel
Mm.
to heat people's homes in the winter. This will mostly affect elderly people in the north. So this is a policy that like without a shadow of a doubt, will result in deaths. Like it's a guarantee that taking away these winter fuel payments will result in people fucking freezing to death in their own homes. He's just recently cut disability benefits, which will also another
Another
policy
W.
that will just affect the nation's poorest. Tax increases to the budget. Again, those tax increases are going to hit the poorest. He had some other ones. There was this weird thing of this early release of prisoners. So overcrowded prisons in the country. He implemented an early release scheme freeing what is this? 1,750 prisoners after serving just 40% of their sentences. So that's sort of just a social issue. I don't know. I don't know what these people were in for, if it's actually bad. So yeah.
So
Cut that one.
what does the Labor government he's Labor, right? That's his party.
Yeah.
What does the Labor government stand for if because in America
Yeah.
social programs it's a very binary. It's Republicans don't believe social programs are good for society at all. They think that it like enables bad human behavior. Democrats want more social programs. They spend
Hmm.
more. But it sounds like the Labor Party is like cutting a lot of social programs and they're kind of like fiscally conservative. Or is there
Yeah.
like just a crisis right now where both parties have to be fiscally conservative? Like, what's going on? I don't, it doesn't make sense to me that that would be the party to do these things.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. I mean, if you go by their name, Labor, they are supposed to be the party of the working class. Now, since the times of Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher was worked hand in glove with Ronald Reagan in the time of privatization. So a lot of this leads back to the Tories and privatizing away lots of the country. So National Rail is completely privatized. Thames Water is privatized. So all of these things that should be, in the power of the government are slowly being sold off to corporations. Obviously, the Tory party has been the worst offender of that, but rather than running back some of those policies, re-socializing a lot of these institutions, Keir Starmer has not done that, which is why you get austerity measures like this that affect the poorest. Not to mention also Starmer's full-throated support for Israel and the genocide in Gaza. Those are the main big things that to me are particularly egregious. But the point is, life is getting, since the Labor Party has come back into power, life has been getting noticeably worse for normal people. And similar to what happened with the Democrats and the Republicans, that's only going to push you one way, and that's going to push you towards a more reactionary, racist, Britain first, big finger
Yep.
quotes there, party, which is reform. And as far as I can tell, reform doesn't really have anything to offer in the same way that Trump doesn't. They're not offering to socialize any of these institutions or bring back any of these benefits. The only thing they have to offer is hatred towards immigrants.
I'll stop
It's
talking about
easier
this
to rally around
Hedges.
that.
I'll stop talking about this Chris Hedges interview, but one thing he said, and I hate parallels to World War II, but the economic destruction, obviously, after World War One, left in Germany, really does give a lot of ample space to these characters who always say they're going to change the system. They're going to remake, whatever the elites messed up, and it's usually a worse outcome.
It's just a result. It's just what happens. You
Yeah,
push people to the point of desperation and you don't have anything to offer them because, as I've said many times on this show, there's a simple answer to all of these issues, and all roads lead to socialism or some form of communism, Marxism, but they're not going to do that. So you have to keep people mad at somebody.
I was looking for the answer to my question about just why is it that they are doing this? Like why labor? Because it seems against like the people who would vote for them. It seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot by doing these types of things. And
Yeah.
it does, the more I read about it, the more it looks like it's kind of like what Harris did to court the Cheneys of the world. Like they're showing that they're able to be fiscally conservative. They're
yeah.
pledging not to raise income tax, national insurance, or corporate tax, committing to fiscal rules that avoid borrowing for day-to-day spending. There's a big problem with inherited economic constraints like a high debt to GDP ratio. Interest payments on the debt have soared. We're experiencing that now. That's like a big thing behind Doge is trying to like limit government spending. Yeah, courting fiscal conservatives and then the actual economic like terror that is like defaulting. I think like a lot of Western countries are actually looking at their debt like post World War II. It is a problem, but why would you just get into power and then like not do anything for the people? It's just like an insane political
Yeah.
tactic.
Hmm.
There's people here who truly believe that like Keir Starmer is like a plant for the for the conservative movement just to tank labor.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm, it scans in a lot of ways because they're not too different from the Dems in this way where maybe they don't want to lose, but they don't mind losing. And they only want to, if they're going to win, they want to win completely on their own terms. And their
Got
terms
it.
are corporatist neoliberal policies. And if they can't do that, they'd rather not govern.
And I mean, if
Yeah.
they keep turning it around, if Farage really doesn't have any power, but he has momentum, it sounds
Yeah.
like there will be a big sweep because you can't really complain about him. He doesn't have power, but he does have a populist message. He does have momentum. And there's seems to be hatred of both major parties.
I thought this guy was
Yeah.
dead after Brexit.
Yeah. You'd think so, right? I don't really understand how he was able to, rise like Lazarus again, other than just like sitting on the back of white hate, really.
Yeah.
He has
Um,
charisma.
He has charisma. He's smart. He's a smart operator. He knows, yeah, I mean, he knows when to slither into a situation, get his face known.
Yeah.
And you know, it really looks like I can't remember when the next general election is. Unless like the Trump administration and the whole MAGA movement really crashes and burns in a fantastic way. I think you could really see the UK going the way of reform, which is sort of British MAGA. If there isn't a real clear picture of why that doesn't work,
Yeah.
um, then
Hmm.
it's probably gonna go that way, and it's really depressing. But at the same time, it's the same way I feel about people who go towards MAGA. It's like, what the fuck are they supposed to do? Because you don't have anybody offering them anything else.
I also think they have legitimate grievances.
Yeah, they do. They're manifesting in the wrong way, and people are being duped when, you're telling them like, and some of the British nationalism is, particularly onerous too, of the people who are saying it's becoming like a Muslim nation and stuff. It's like fucking, I don't know, it's fucking
Oh my God.
three quarters of the United Kingdom is fucking white. Like it's so stupid. But
Yeah. Dude,
people need people
I
need
see that
to
online.
need someone to hate.
Yeah.
It's wild, like the passive racism I see online. It's like this fucking dude, just some guy like protesting against like pro-Palestinians, and he's just like, "Let's go England, let's go England." I'm like, okay, well, it's like kind of, I mean, he's being aggressive about it, obviously. Like, let's go England. It's not. And then the comments are like, "See, it's illegal to love England. This country's taken over." And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like from an outsider's perspective, like I get it. Like I see how this man
Yeah.
resonates with people online and like, but
Persecution
it's the same
complex.
thing in America. It's like it's
Yeah.
not, your country's not taken over. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a weird thing of them. Yeah, well, remember they would have this was several years ago, but they were perpetuating this lie of that there were like entire Muslim no-go zones in the United
Oh
Kingdom that were
yeah, yeah.
basically
Birmingham.
yeah, they were under Sharia law,
Oh
including
yeah.
Birmingham, the second largest city in the United Kingdom.
The entire
Yeah.
city of Birmingham was a no-go zone. You
That
Yeah,
remember?
the
sounds like something
entire
JD Vance would say in a
Yeah,
lecture.
Yeah.
the entire city of Birmingham was under Sharia law. The new thing now is these Muslim rape gangs that are like these grooming rape gangs that are off
Yeah.
like, raping young white people, which is also, I mean, coming from British society,
Yeah.
pretty fucking rich to talk about grooming and pedophilia. If we're gonna look at like the likes of the royal family and Eton and like, like the British boarding school system and all of that shit, it's like, okay, really? There is an epidemic of grooming rape gangs in the United Kingdom. It's called the ruling class.
Hmm.
Shit.
Fucking
You
Jimmy Savile and Prince Andrew and all that shit. It's just they're looking at the wrong people. But yeah, back to the like the England First people, for example, because I've seen them when I've been at Palestine marches in the United Kingdom. They're always there. And these would be the likes of like what used to be the English Defence League, the EDL, and then the BNP, the British National Party. They had a big heyday about like 15 years ago, I
Mhm.
think. But you guys have heard of like Tommy Robinson?
Yeah,
He
I
was
just
kind
wanted
of
to
a
mention him. Apparently
he,
Musk thinks that he should be the head of reform.
of course he does. Tommy Robinson, who by the way is definitely a Mossad agent. But yeah, so these guys will show up. They're never from London. But yeah, I remember. one of the Palestine protests last year, these guys just show up to they just are agent provocateurs. They're just like working class guys who are at the pub in some kind of they come from like villages way outside of London. They'll take the train in and be drunk as shit and coked up and just go into central London kind of complete. They don't even really operate as counter protesters. They're not protesting the protest. They're just there to stir shit. And like they will get in fights with the cops. Like this has happened multiple times.
Oh,
So
really?
and then it's good for, the likes of the BBC and different other conservative news outlets, because then they get to say, oh, there was violence at the pro-Palestine march, even though it had nothing to do with the pro-Palestine people or even the pro-Israel people usually. It's
Hmm.
just these other guys with the St. George's Cross
Yeah.
draped around them, drunk as shit, coked up, just kind of getting in fights with whoever, and then the
That's their
cops.
like rebel flag, right?
Yeah.
But they win the headline war.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah, oftentimes. But when you see
What I'm saying
them,
is if
it's
they
never a
deface the
lot of
protest,
people.
if they
Yeah,
deface the
yeah.
protest and can make
Yeah,
it seem like the protest
exactly.
became
E-
violent, yeah,
Exactly. And it doesn't
that's a
happen
good
every
point.
time. Um I remember one Palestine march in recent memory where like they caused enough of a stir that it did get a lot of headlines. But it's not a big enough contingent to really grab headlines, because you can't, it's not like you can take a picture of this group of people and make it look like a meaningful counter protest. I mean, it's similar when you see like people with Israeli flags. You'll see, tens of
Yeah,
thousands of people marching for Palestine, and then you'll see like 50 fucking freaks foaming at the mouth being like, I hope your daughter gets raped, like
yeah.
who are the pro-Israel people.
So it's
And these,
disorganized. Should we talk about John Fetterman?
Oh my
oh
God,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, delaying my
yes.
flight.
Jeez. Dude, thoughts and prayers for him though, I hope he gets better.
Yeah, well, we were, before the show started, Ben and I were chatting before you jumped on, Andrew. Like so much of this, and I hate even talking about it because it gets a little prescriptive, is seems to be based off his aftermath of the stroke.
Yeah.
They're trying to
I that
blame
was
these
my
political positions on the
No,
stroke.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, was he depressed before? Like I know, brain
Yeah,
physiology, like did this actually affect his and maybe that was the point in the article because I immediately started thinking about that. I was like, what's the connection between the stroke and his personality?
yeah,
And I don't know. I've never met the guy. I only know him through this stuff, but I also know some of the weird shit and stances he has. Like
yeah.
I would love to see him resign for and then make a full recovery, but right now I just don't want him in there. He's a
Well,
piece
we
of
should
shit.
set up the article, or rather the few articles
No,
that came out talking
let's just
about
talk
John
shit.
Fetterman. Yeah, I could do that all day. So there was three articles. I think it was led by this New York Magazine article and the Intelligencer, a long expose really talking about John Fetterman's struggles with, it sounds like maintaining campaign staff, but mostly due to, some physical and mental health decline that has, the article suggests, changed a lot of his political positions. The big one being full-throated support for Israel. Um, Ben, Andrew, are there any others that I may be missing?
Those I the New York Times one was the main one I saw, and they had made reference to the New York Magazine or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah. Any other
But
issues though that it mentioned outside of Israel?
Oh, I mean, from the
oh,
from these
sorry.
articles,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, from the articles, it mostly, I mean, necessarily have to focus on his singular focus of Israel, because that's the only thing he talks about now.
yeah,
Um, from what I can tell, I mean, like if I was a Pennsylvania resident, I'd be furious because he doesn't, I've never heard him talking about anything related to Pennsylvania. He's only just talking about like his one issue is like a fever dream of like wishing death and destruction on Palestinian people. It
yeah.
seems to be the only thing he cares about. I mean, as far as like, the guy who won, and the guy who, which I think a lot of his image that he created around himself as this like working class hero is fake.
Yeah.
He did not grow up working class. He went to Harvard. I don't think he ever had a real job until he was fucking mayor of that shitty town. But yeah, he was advocating for all kinds of progressive policies. He was Medicare for all. He was $15 minimum wage, marijuana legalization, and then what was it like 2 years ago or whatever? I don't remember when his stroke was, but then he was starting to say like I'm not a progressive, and like has
Yeah.
been even hinting more and more that he's like more in the Trump camp. And then obviously
I, yeah.
support for Israel. He's had a big change on his stance on immigration.
Yeah.
Withdrawal of LGBTQ support. I mean, fucking name it.
I
Oh, and then it
remember.
just seems and then he's never voting. He's never going to any, he never like attends any of the votes he's supposed to.
Oh, I
Like
didn't know that.
he's not doing anything but being like, they should kill all of Gaza.
The reason this has become a big deal is there is
Sitting on
talk that
park
Fetterman could,
benches drooling.
there's talk that Fetterman, the reason this is a big deal,
Crying.
there's talk that Fetterman could be a 2028 contender for
Get
presidential,
fucked.
Democratic,
There's
Democratic
absolutely. Come
presidential
on.
candidate.
Come on.
Tell me I'm wrong. I mean,
Dan,
like, they
don't
mentioned,
do this to me.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you're probably right.
But no,
Well, they act like he's a
pundits have been
centrist.
saying that.
They act like he's a centrist, right? That he has a friendly relationship with Trump as if that is political capital.
That's so dumb. That's a, that would be too far for me. That'd be the straw that broke the back. If the Democrats really thought this was a good idea, the other ones I could see. I have justifications for all the other decisions they've made, like Hillary, Biden, unfortunately, and then Harris for some reason. Yeah, but like to have 4 years to come up and prop up a good candidate and to think from ground up we should build this guy who really is not, he's not nationally, like he's nationally known but not for good stuff. So I remember him like before he
He's
was elected to
nationally
this.
known for being a big doofus.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Like
Yeah.
literally, he's nationally known
embarrassing.
for for again just wanting to murder brown people in Palestine and like getting in car crashes. Like
I want
it's
to get
just
back. I want to get back to uh what I remember him from. Yeah, the car crash thing was hilarious. I was like, all right, note
Hold
to
on.
self,
Can
never
can
do
you
it.
explain the car crash thing before you go back to the?
There were a couple instances in the article where they were like, in the article was written in a way where it was like, a bunch of his coworkers or staff say never to get in a car with him because he's just such an erratic driver. They really just made this man sound so unstable. Like each paragraph, like they would flip from so many random like personal issues that he has to like a legitimate like this is the way he works and operates as like a member of Congress.
Yeah.
But so they would always like hit him with like he's a bad driver. He was the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania before
Yeah.
this. And he did have I remember seeing videos and like he was kind of like a blue dog Democrat, like in a like a working man Democrat that would probably do well down here in the South, like in West Virginia or Kentucky, like the old sort of like labor union type of Democrat.
Yeah.
Now he's like a neocon. He's so fucking weak. Like I just don't understand. I It gives me the impression that he's like been compromised, honestly, the way he's flip-flopped.
I want to read this from the Intelligencer, the New York Magazine article
Mhm.
about it's about his changing stance. One was a changing stance on Israel. We can get back to that in a minute, but really what his wife said about it. It's just a reminder. His wife was undocumented from Brazil, was a huge person by his side in his candidacy for Senate. But anyways, Giselle arrived at her husband's Senate office and, according to a staffer present, they got into a heated argument. They're bombing refugee camps. How can you support this? The staffer recalled to her, saying with tears in her eyes. She was saying this to Fetterman. That's all propaganda, Fetterman replied. Later, a still visibly upset Giselle pulled the staffer aside. She asked him if members of Fetterman's team were pushing him to take these stances for political reasons. The staffer told her the opposite was true. Many of them were upset, as she was. If you're pushing back on this, there's no hope, the staffer recalled her, saying. This is horrible news. A few days later, Giselle texted a different staffer. I am at a breaking point and I can't co-sign this any longer. I love some help in language to separate myself from this. Can anyone help me?
Jesus Christ.
I mean, I don't know how much of that is conjecture. It is that's very personal.
I know that the level of like personal, not just attacks, but personal information. This is talking about
Yeah,
the guy's health, mental health, talking about his doctors,
yeah.
quotes. Like it was a strange article to read about someone, but I guess he is a public figure and a congressman.
I do feel like there's just so many articles around it. I do feel like there's some coordinated character assassination going on. I think maybe by rivals within the Democratic Party.
When's he up for election? When did he take this position? It was late, right?
Yeah, so he's on an off year. I think it might be
2023?
2020.
That can't be right. That seems too late. It was
Yeah, I was gonna say
before
it's
that.
2028 is when
He he was up against Dr. Oz.
he was a media darling then.
I don't think this guy
Celebs
stands
came
a
out for him.
chance to be reelected to senator or president. That's an absolute joke to me.
No, no, it's crazy. Yeah, the last thing I'll say about the article is, yeah, it does seem like just because there's so many of them coming out at once, it feels a little coordinated in certain ways. But it has that flavor of DC Insider thing that reminds me of the reports about Dianne Feinstein,
Yeah.
where like all these anonymous staffers are like, it's so sad, we just don't know what to do about it. It's like you all should have jumped ship years ago, like, or at least
Yeah.
with John Fetterman months ago. It's like stop propping him up and like stop trying to make me care about his medical well-being or his mental well-being. Like I don't care. He's propagating evil in the world and he needs to be out. So anything going on that he's struggling with, he can struggle with that as a private citizen. I don't
I'm
care.
excited to talk to our guest on Tuesday, Akila Lacey. She's done a lot of great reporting on Fetterman staffing departures, so
Yeah.
that'll be a good conversation.
Yeah.
I was watching SNL before this. They're sometimes funny still. And you mentioned Ubers earlier, and I guess it was Weekend Update, and they were doing something like, "Oh, Ubers are now offering rides to prom dates as they leave the prom to make sure they get home."
Uh-huh.
And they're like, "Now arriving, your driver, Matt." And it was Matt Gates.
Oh no.
uh,
Does he still have his TV show? Like that I haven't heard anything about that show.
he has a TV show, Matt Gates.
Yeah, I remember like he left obviously like take AG and like avoid that report coming out. But then
Yeah.
I think it's on Newsmax. He got his
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Matt Gates.
There's been no updates about it.
No, I bet it's doing terrible.
He was never like an
Oh,
ideological
he's
leader, you know? There's no reason to watch him. Like, I don't know what takes
yeah,
it.
he was just a shit talker. He would have been
Yeah.
great to have, like he would. Oh, dude, he went on Bill Maher's podcast. I don't know if you saw that. That was really weird.
Oh no.
I think we maybe talked about
Oh no,
it.
we did. Yeah, that's right.
It says he might try to run for the AG in 2026.
He's
He's
so
not gone by a
hateable.
long shot. Fuck yeah, he's hateable, but I mean, that's kind of like political capital. It's like you're gonna
Yeah.
get media.
Yeah, it's like, this persecution complex is really, really beneficial, right? Until it isn't. Until I think that people are gonna think it's corny.
I want to know how you think it's gonna like collapse on him because I don't see it backfiring unless like it just becomes over the top. I could see certain people doing it wrong, like
Yeah.
that kind of breaks the illusion, but I don't know. I'm not certain. I just have never seen anything at that scale like break like a mass hysteria.
Yeah, it's true.
There's always hope. I mean, we could see it, but I think really like the things that would disenfranchise people are real world things like the economy, a
Yeah.
war, I don't like some health epidemic, but I think that's only exacerbated problems in America and the world.
Yeah, I guess if the economy stays bad, he would lose probably his corporate backing.
This is the type of thing that I think would be great because and I saw or I was listening to something that was saying about how Temu, um, Alibaba, and Shein were all like the prices went way up because of the
De minimis, yeah,
the de minimis tariffs.
loophole,
And
yeah,
it's that type of transparent, that like one-to-one reality. And this is what I always say when I say like, Democrats are really bad at messaging, is that they don't go out there and they don't like talk about the wins,
yeah,
and they do stuff, and it kind of like it happens 4 years later,
hmm,
and Trump goes out there, sucks, but he calls it a win, and that's like good enough.
yeah,
Like that's the reality that you live in. Like you have to actually go out there and claim victory, or else people don't even know. And I think a lot of like political opinion is peer pressure,
yeah,
for lack of a better phrase. Um, and there's no one wants to openly be a Democrat because they're so fucking lame, which we keep
yeah,
talking about. And they're losers. Not only have they like lose this election, but they're just lame. I don't know how else to say it. Like no one wants to identify with that. No one's gonna be wearing like a Democrat hat, you know?
yeah. Well, I mean,
Whereas
it's
like Trump has become like a fashion brand almost.
no, I mean, Trump has become punk rock, right?
Sadly. It's because they said it a bunch of times. This is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. You just say it enough and it just like happens.
This has been Villain for All Seasons. I'm Dan.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Ben.
Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe, follow Pope Watch 2025.